Coffee shop serendipity. The autumn rain pelted against the windows of Inkwell Books and Brew as Olivia Reed hurriedly stepped inside, shaking droplets from her copper hair. After a 12-hour shift at Memorial Hospital's emergency room, the smell of coffee and old books was her version of paradise. "The usual, Liv," called Damon, the barista who had memorized her order months ago. "Please," she replied, fishing in her purse for her wallet. "Make it extra strong today. The ER was absolute chaos." Olivia glanced around the cozy shop, disappointed to find all the tables occupied. Her shoulders slumped slightly. All she wanted was to sink into a comfortable chair with her dog-eared copy of The Night Circus and decompress from the day's stress. A man with tousled dark hair looked up from the corner table where he sat alone, his laptop open beside a half-empty mug. He wore a faded navy hoodie and wire-rimmed glasses that kept sliding down his nose. Nothing about him stood out particularly. Just another remote worker taking advantage of free Wi-Fi. "You can share mine if you'd like," he offered, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "I'm just finishing up." Olivia hesitated. Normally she'd politely decline, preferring her solitude after dealing with people all day. But something in his gentle expression, slightly shy but kind, made her nod. "Thanks. It's packed today," she said, setting down her worn messenger bag as Damon brought over her coffee, a vanilla latte with an extra shot of espresso. "I'm Jackson," the man said, closing his laptop. "Olivia, I'd shake your hand, but I've been disinfecting them all day at the hospital and they're basically sandpaper now," she joked. He chuckled. "Healthcare worker?" "ER nurse. Today was, well, let's just say I earned this coffee." "I can't imagine," Jackson said, his voice carrying genuine respect. "My work feels pretty trivial compared to literally saving lives." Olivia shrugged. "Everyone's work matters in different ways." "What do you do?" Jackson paused, seeming to consider his answer carefully. "Software development mostly, problem solving." "Impressive," Olivia replied, taking a sip of her latte. "My brain shuts down at anything more complicated than resetting my Wi-Fi router." Their conversation flowed easily after that. They discussed books. He was reading Murakami while she preferred magical realism. They debated the merits of vinyl records versus digital music. Jackson listened intently when she described a challenging case from her shift, offering thoughtful questions rather than empty sympathy. What struck Olivia most was how easy it was to talk to him. No pretense, no awkward pauses, just authentic conversation between two strangers sharing a table on a rainy evening. When Jackson finally packed up his laptop, Olivia was surprised to realize an hour had passed. "Thanks for letting me invade your space," she said. "It was my pleasure," he replied, then hesitated. "I come here most Thursdays. If you ever want to, share a table again." Olivia smiled. "I might take you up on that. Thursdays are my early shift." As she watched him leave, hood pulled up against the rain, Olivia returned to her book. Just another pleasant encounter in a city full of strangers. She had no way of knowing that the unassuming man in the worn hoodie had just walked out to a waiting luxury car, where his driver stood ready to take him back to the headquarters of Hayes Innovations, the tech company revolutionizing artificial intelligence that Jackson had founded 5 years ago. She had no idea that the software developer she'd just shared coffee with was worth billions, or that for the first time in years, Jackson Hayes had felt like a normal person again. Beyond first impressions true to his word, Jackson returned to Inkwell Books and Brew the following Thursday. Olivia spotted him immediately, hunched over his laptop in the same corner table. This time he'd saved her a seat, evidenced by the reserved napkin and the vanilla latte waiting for her. "You remembered my order?" Olivia asked, sliding into the chair across from him. Jackson looked up, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. "I pay attention to details. Occupational hazard." "Well, thank you. I actually need this more than usual today." She wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Lost a patient this morning. Elderly man, cardiac arrest. We tried everything. Instead of offering platitudes, Jackson simply nodded. That must be incredibly difficult. The hardest part is calling. The family, Olivia admitted. No matter how many times I do it, it never gets easier. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Jackson gently changed the subject. I finished that book you recommended. You were right about the ending. Their Thursday meetings became an unspoken ritual. Jackson always arrived first, securing their table and ordering her coffee. Olivia would appear after her shift sometimes, still in scrubs, her hair hastily pulled back. They never exchanged phone numbers or social media, just genuine conversation for an hour each week. On their fourth Thursday, Olivia arrived to find Jackson attempting to fix the bookstore's ancient espresso machine while Damon looked on helplessly. I see you've been promoted to barista, she teased, leaning against the counter. Jackson emerged with a smudge of coffee grounds on his cheek. Just tinkering. This model has a design flaw in the pressure valve. His fingers deftly reassembled, components that Olivia couldn't even name. Where did you learn to do that? He shrugged. I've always liked taking things apart, seeing how they work, making them better. By their sixth Thursday, Olivia found herself looking forward to their meetings more than she cared to admit. There was something refreshing about Jackson, his quiet intelligence, his thoughtful questions, his lack of pretension. When he mentioned needing to miss the following week for a conference in Tokyo, Olivia felt a surprising pang of disappointment. I'll bring you something back, he promised. You don't have to do that. I know, he replied simply. I want to. 2 weeks later, he returned with a small package wrapped in delicate paper, a vintage medical book on emergency care from the 1920s that he'd found in a tiny Tokyo bookshop. This is too much, Olivia protested. It made me think of you, Jackson said. Besides, it was gathering dust there. Now it has someone who appreciates it. What Olivia didn't know was that Jackson had flown to Tokyo not for a conference but to finalize a billion-dollar acquisition. What Jackson didn't tell her was that he'd spent 3 hours in that bookshop searching for the perfect gift, while his executive team waited impatiently. Instead, they simply sat together in the corner of a small bookstore cafe, two people enjoying each other's company, building something authentic in a world that often felt anything but. Unveiled Truths, the annual Starlight Gala, was Memorial Hospital's most important fundraiser. As a senior ER nurse, Olivia was expected to attend, though she dreaded making small talk with wealthy donors in uncomfortable heels. Just 2 hours. Her colleague Natalie reassured her as they entered the ballroom. Smile, thank people for supporting pediatric care, then we can escape. Olivia nodded, adjusting her simple navy dress, the nicest thing she owned, yet still modest compared to the designer gowns surrounding her. She accepted a champagne flute from a passing server and prepared to endure an evening of polite conversation. The donor list this year is incredible, Natalie whispered. The Hayes Foundation alone pledged $10 million for the new children's wing. Olivia nearly choked on her champagne. Hayes? As in Hayes Innovations? The very same. Apparently, the reclusive genius himself might actually make an appearance tonight. No one's seen Jackson Hayes at a public event in over a year. A strange feeling settled in Olivia's stomach as Natalie continued chattering about the elusive tech billionaire. It couldn't possibly be the same person. Her Jackson wore faded hoodies and fixed coffee machines. He listened to her rant about hospital bureaucracy and recommended obscure novels. Then she saw him across the room. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo instead of worn jeans. His usually tousled hair was neatly styled, the wire-rimmed glasses replaced by contacts. But there was no mistaking those eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, currently engaged in conversation with the hospital director. That's him, Natalie confirmed, following her gaze. Jackson Hayes, youngest person ever on the Fortune 500 list, built his first AI system at 19, revolutionized the entire tech industry by 25. Olivia felt her world tilt sideways. For 2 months, she'd been sharing coffee with one of the wealthiest men in the country, complaining about her student loans, teasing him about his terrible taste in music, completely unaware of who he really was. When his eyes finally met hers across the room, Olivia saw recognition, then apprehension flash across his face. She turned away, needing air, needing space to process this revelation. She escaped to a quiet balcony overlooking the hospital gardens. Minutes later, the door opened behind her. "Olivia," Jackson said quietly. "I can explain." She turned, arms crossed. "Explain what? That you've been lying to me for months? That you let me ramble about my pathetic salary while you're worth what? Billions?" "I never lied about who I am," he replied. "I just omitted my last name and job title." "That's a pretty significant omission." Jackson stepped closer. "When people know who I am, they change. They want something from me. Money, connections, publicity. With you, I could just be myself, no expectations, no agenda." "So I was some kind of social experiment?" The hurt in her voice was palpable. "No," he said firmly. "You were the first real connection I've had in years. Every Thursday with you at that cafe was more real than any board meeting or investor dinner." Olivia wanted to stay angry, but she recognized the sincerity in his voice. The same sincerity that had drawn her to him from the beginning. "I should have told you sooner," Jackson admitted. I was afraid of losing this. Losing you." Before Olivia could respond, Natalie burst onto the balcony. "Liv, there you are. And, oh my God." Her eyes widened as she recognized Jackson. "Mr. Hayes, it's an honor. I'm Natalie Chen, Neurology Department." As Natalie gushed about the Foundation's contributions, Olivia slipped away, her mind reeling with questions. Who was Jackson Hayes really? The humble man who fixed espresso machines and remembered her coffee order? Or the billionaire whose name adorned the hospital's new research center? And more importantly, could she trust either version? Genuine connections. 3 days passed without a word from Jackson. Olivia tried to convince herself it was for the best. Their worlds were too different, the deception too significant to overlook. Yet she found herself glancing toward their usual table each time she entered Inkwell Books and Brew. On Thursday, she almost didn't go. Pride told her to stay away, to forget the man with two identities. But curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, led her to the bookstore cafe at their usual time. Jackson wasn't there. Olivia ordered her coffee and claimed their corner table, telling herself she'd come for the ambiance, not for him. She was halfway through her latte when the bell above the door chimed. He looked different, not the polished executive from the gala, but not quite the casual Jackson she'd known either. His jeans were newer, his sweater clearly expensive despite its simplicity. He carried a small package wrapped in brown paper. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, standing awkwardly beside the table. "Neither was I." After a moment's hesitation, he sat across from her. "I owe you an apology. Several, actually." "You could start with why," Olivia said. "Why the secrecy? Why me?" Jackson's fingers traced patterns on the wooden table. "When I started Hayes Innovations, I was just a programmer with an idea. Then suddenly I had investors and employees and responsibilities. My name became a brand. People stopped seeing me. They saw dollar signs, opportunities, a connection to exploit." He looked up at her. "That first day we met, you needed a table. You had no idea who I was, and you treated me like a person, just a person. Do you know how rare that is in my life?" Olivia softened slightly. "I understand wanting privacy, Jackson. But 2 months of friendship built on a partial truth feels unbalanced." "You're right," he acknowledged. "I should have trusted you sooner. But everything else was real, our conversations, my interest in your work, the way I feel when I'm with you." He slid the package across the table. "This isn't some expensive gift to win you over. Just something I thought you should have." Cautiously, Olivia unwrapped it to find a simple leather-bound journal. Inside, in neat handwriting, Jackson had documented their Thursday conversations, books they'd discussed, stories she'd shared about the ER, notes about medical topics he'd researched to better understand her work. "I've been keeping this since our second meeting," he explained. "Not because you're some project, but because our conversations matter to me. I didn't want to forget anything." The journal revealed a man who listened deeply, who valued their connection enough to preserve it. This wasn't the action of someone playing a role. I'm still trying to reconcile the Jackson I know with Jackson Hayes, tech billionaire, Olivia admitted. They're the same person, he said quietly. The difference is, with you, I can just be the parts of me that matter, not the net worth or the company or the public image. Olivia considered his words. I don't care about your money, Jackson, but I do care about honesty. If we're going to continue, whatever this is, I need to know it's real. I promise you, Olivia, nothing in my life has felt more real than Thursday afternoons in this cafe with you. His sincerity was unmistakable. Olivia realized that while his omission had hurt her, the man sitting across from her, billionaire or not, was still the same person who had listened to her hardest days, who fixed coffee machines and remembered how she took her latte. So, she said finally, where do we go from here? Jackson smiled cautiously. How about we start with honesty? My full name is Jackson Thomas Hayes. I founded an AI company that got very lucky. I have more money than I know what to do with. And I think I'm falling in love with an ER nurse who couldn't care less about any of that. For the first time since the gala, Olivia smiled back. Well, since we're being honest, I think I might be falling for you too, despite your terrible taste in music. A love worth more than gold. 6 months later, Olivia rushed into Hayes Innovations' sleek headquarters, still wearing her hospital scrubs. The receptionist recognized her immediately and waved her through security. He's finishing a board meeting, Ms. Reed. Should be done any minute. Olivia nodded, pacing the executive floor. Their relationship had evolved in ways neither expected. Integrating their vastly different worlds had proven challenging yet rewarding. Jackson had shown her parts of his life gradually. His modernist home overlooking the bay, the pressures of running a global company, the constant scrutiny that followed him. In turn, Olivia had invited him deeper into hers. Hospital charity drives, dinners with fellow nurses, the everyday heroism of healthcare workers. The boardroom doors opened, executives in expensive suits filing out. Jackson emerged last, deep, in conversation with his CFO. When he spotted Olivia, his professional demeanor melted into concern. What's wrong? Your shift doesn't end for hours. There's been a major pileup on the interstate, she explained quickly. The hospital is overwhelmed. We need additional surgical teams, equipment, specialists. Jackson was already reaching for his phone. What do you need exactly? That's why I'm here. Memorial doesn't have the resources for this scale of emergency, but Providence Hospital across town does. We need transportation to move stable patients there to free up beds, plus coordination between facilities. Without hesitation, Jackson turned to his assistant. Cancel my meetings for the rest of the day. Then call our transportation division. I want every available company vehicle repurposed for patient transport immediately. And get our logistics team on the line. Within hours, Hayes Innovations had transformed into an emergency command center. Company vehicles became patient transports. Software engineers repurposed their logistics algorithms to coordinate between hospitals. And Jackson's private helicopter transported critical medical supplies. Olivia worked alongside the ER team for 20 straight hours, moving seamlessly between treating patients and coordinating with Jackson's team. When the crisis finally stabilized, she found him in a quiet corner of the hospital, still making calls despite his obvious exhaustion. You know, she said softly, when I fell for a billionaire, I assumed there would be fancy dinners and exotic vacations, not sleeping on hospital chairs and organizing ambulance schedules. Jackson set down his phone. Disappointed? The opposite. Olivia sat beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. Today I saw what you can really do with your resources. Not buying islands or collecting sports cars, but making a difference when it matters most. I've been thinking, Jackson said, his voice serious. Hayes Innovations has always focused on creating better technology. But watching you work, seeing what you and your colleagues do every day, it's made me realize we could be doing more. What do you mean? I want to establish a new division focused entirely on healthcare technology. Software that helps emergency departments manage mass casualty events, AI systems that predict patient deterioration before symptoms appear, communication platforms that connect isolated rural hospitals with specialists. Olivia looked at him with surprise. That's ambitious. I need someone who understands both worlds to help lead it, Jackson continued. Someone with medical expertise and unfailing compassion. Someone who sees people, not problems to solve. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Hayes? Olivia teased. I'm offering you a partnership, he replied, taking her hand. In every sense of the word. In that moment, exhausted and disheveled in a hospital corridor, Olivia recognized the truth that had been building since that rainy day in a bookstore café. Their connection had never been about wealth or status. It was about two people who saw each other clearly, who recognized value beyond balance sheets and social standing. Jackson Hayes had built an empire of technology, but with Olivia Reed, he had found something his billions could never buy. Someone who loved the man, not the fortune. And Olivia, who had always prided herself on treating everyone with equal compassion, had discovered that sometimes the people who seem to have everything are actually searching for the one thing money can't purchase. Genuine connection in a world of transactions. Partnership accepted, she whispered, sealing their future with a kiss that promised more than wealth could ever provide.